Well, somebody who also is not silent is former Secretary of State and Fox News contributor Mike Pompeo. He joins us right now. Mike, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
Okay, so we heard that apparently behind the scenes, Vice President Harris essentially was saying, hey, you guys have got to wrap it up in Israel, and you got to protect more of the people in Palestine.
Steve, that's crazy. It's crazy in the sense of that no nation can permit terrorists who killed 1,200 of your people to sit on your border and still be armed and capable of doing that again, and making very clear they have every intention of doing that again. The real dangerous thing about Vice President Harris is her model, which suggests somehow that there is a moral equivalence between what's happening in Gaza today and what happened on October 7th inside of Israel. Nothing could be further from the truth. And finally, this administration created the conditions for this. They played footsie with the Iranians. They tried to get back into the nuclear deal. They unfroze $6 billion to get a few hostages back. And frankly, now the Iranians are holding even more hostages than before they'd paid that $6 billion. That's the kind of appeasement. That's the kind of policy that leads precisely to someone like Hamas thinking they can get away with this. And, today they're still holding Americans, and there's been no price paid by the Iranians for what they did, both in Israel and the risk that they continue to present to us here in the homeland as well, Steve.
Right. And speaking of the homeland, not just a couple dozen miles from where you are situated, we're looking at what happened outside Union Station on Wednesday. And in addition to the scuffles, there's the flag burning. Finally, the vice president came out yesterday and issued this statement. She said, yesterday at Union Station in D.C., we saw despicable acts by unpatriotic protesters and dangerous hate-fueled rhetoric. I condemn any individuals associating with the brutal terrorist organization Hamas. I condemn the burning of the American flag. That flag is a symbol of our highest ideals and a nation and represents the promise of America. It should never be desecrated in that way. We hadn't heard anything like that from this administration, to the best of my knowledge, in the last couple of years. So obviously, she's running for president.
A patently political statement yesterday to protect her rear end, for sure. But, Steve, it's not heartfelt in the sense of it's not just those protesters that were out there doing despicable acts. And frankly, President Biden's national law enforcement folks not doing the things they could to protect American assets there. That was a national park, national service asset that was defaced. But importantly, what they've done is they've had a wink and a nod to these folks and said, right. Nope, you can do this. These protests are fine. And frankly, if you hear Vice President Harris's statements, she sides. She is sympathetic to many of the things that they say. She thinks Israel is an occupying force. She thinks it was a mistake to move the capital to Jerusalem. All of the things that happened in the Trump administration, right. She's against, and those protesters are against. So her statement didn't ring very true to me, and I am confident she put it out just to provide air cover for someone somewhere who may be running for Senate and can't withstand a vice president running for president, right. Who's got a policy position that is deeply at odds with American interests.
You just mentioned the Trump administration. You were Secretary of State, easy for me to say, during the Trump administration. We had the former president on with us yesterday, and here is what he said he's going to talk to the prime minister about today at Mar-a-Lago. Listen to this.
I'd make sure that it gets over with fast. You have to end this fast. It can't continue to go on like this. It's too long. It's too much. You got to get your hostages back. I think they're going to have a lot of bad news with the hostages. I think some of those hostages, many of them maybe are dead. Yeah. I believe they're dead. I watched them as they took the hostages in disbelief. Again, it would have never happened if I was president.
I'll give you the final word, Mr. Secretary.
Well, we can say for sure this, Steve. It didn't happen while he was president, while I was Secretary of State. We didn't have Putin invading Ukraine. We didn't have Hamas terrorizing Israel. That is factually true. And we do need to make sure that we give Israel all the tools, all the leash that they need to wrap this up and accomplish their security interests as quickly as possible. President Trump is absolutely right about that.
All right. We know you've got a very busy Friday. Mike, thank you very much for starting your day with Fox and Friends.
Blessings to you. Have a good weekend.
You too.